All right, everyone, welcome to the second lesson. Now that we've gotten time and a little bit of comfortability with navigating the interface, we're going to talk about something that upfront might not sound as exciting, but just like anything, it has its place and it is essential. And I'm talking about organization. Now, trust me, messy Blender scenes leads to frustration, wasted time, lost progress, and just confusion, really. So, I'm going to teach you how to build clean habits from day one. So, where does the organization really happen? In a new file that I've loaded up here, this happens in the outliner, which we got a sneak peek in the previous lesson. This panel here shows you everything that exists in your scene. The mesh, curves, lights, camera, you name it, it's going to be here. You can think of the outliner like a scene hierarchy or a file browser on your computer. I can click objects here to select them. For instance, if I click the cube in the outliner, it's going to highlight blue in the outliner, and then the corresponding mesh or object will be outlined in orange in the 3D viewport. And this works vice versa. If I click the object in the 3D viewport, it will show me which object corresponds to in the outliner. I could rename an object by double-clicking it and changing the name. You could also click on it and press F2 in the outliner. F2 is a common renaming shortcut. And besides the objects, we have a couple of toggleable restrictions. So the eye restriction here is for visibility. I can hide or reveal an object from my scene. The camera here is for rendering. So some people who work exclusively in Blender often render scenes for higher quality visuals. And this camera allows them to enable and disable what objects are included in that render, despite us still seeing it in the 3D viewport. On the top here, this little filter drop down also gives us access to other restrictions. And one of the common one is this little arrowhead right here. If I select this as a toggleable restriction, I get the option immediately beside my objects here. And this one deals with locking an object. So for instance, if I disable the selection for the cube, I can no longer select the cube in my 3D viewport. I personally run with default restrictions, but I have seen other people find this one super helpful, and it may be suitable for your workflow as well. Now, besides objects, the outliner also gives us the ability to create collections, which are these white boxes, such as this one right here. Collections are helpful to group objects. For instance, the default collection is named collection, and if I enable or disable any of this collection's restrictions, it takes effect for everything inside this collection. So for instance, if I disable the visibility for this collection, everything inside of it, the camera, light, and the cube, all hide with it. The little arrow before the collection aligns an indent right here. So when it is expanded, we could see everything that is inside the collection. But we could also collapse it to just showcase the collection box itself, depending on how many things you have in your scene. The other restriction that comes with the selection is this checkbox over here, and this just excludes it from the viewport layer, which you can just use to hide everything quickly until enabled. So it just, the difference between this and the eye icon is the eye icon will still show everything, but if you just want to hide it completely and not deal with it for now, using the select box might be a little bit more appropriate for you. Of course, the collection at the top of the hierarchy named Scene Collection just holds everything in our scene. So if I want to remove an object from a collection, I could just drag it out of the appropriate hierarchy. And we could see here that if I remove this cube from the collection named Collection, right here, the toggleable restrictions for the collection no longer apply because it's no longer inside of this collection. And of course, I could drag this back in if I wanted to. So in general, you could think of it just like files on your computer, and collections in this case are like folders. Great. Now we are in a good space to talk about adding additional things to our scene. In the 3D viewport, if we select the Add button on the top, we get a drop-down of a variety of objects that we can add to the scene. These icons in front of each of the objects are unique to that type of object that we are working with. And these serve as a handy image for us in order to quickly understand which one we are dealing with, for instance. So from the default objects, we can see that the camera is a camera icon, which is right here. The light is a light object, and the cube is a mesh object. So let's add something new to the scene. For instance, let's add a cylinder. So let's choose a cylinder here. And I will hide the cube to see exactly, so we can see exactly what happened here. The name of this mesh is cylinder because that was the same thing it was named in the add drop-down menu. The cylinder's origin, similarly with any other mesh, is located in the center of mass, volume-wise. And when added, the location of the origin is default to the location of the 3D cursor. To showcase this, let's repeat this action again, but I am going to change the location of a 3D cursor. So if I delete the cylinder that I have here, move the cursor, and then I add the cylinder back, you can see that the origin gets aligned to where the cursor is. Okay, so I know I teased this a little earlier, but we can look into some settings with origins and the cursor. So if we press Shift S on our keyboard, we will open up this hidden submenu. So if you want to set back to the world origin, as seen in the previous lesson, we will press 1 on my keyboard, or I could highlight over cursor to world origin right here. If I select the cylinder and open that submenu again with Shift S, I can move the selected object back to the world origin, i.e. where the cursor is now, by selecting Selection to Cursor, or pressing A to my keyboard. Really, one of these actions will be suitable depending on your need, but I want to showcase this to you because there are going to be times when you accidentally move the cursor to a position that's unsuitable and you want to get back to a comfortable place, which to me is the world origin. All right, let's go ahead and move the cylinder to the side like this, so that we could see that the cube and the cylinder together without any overlapping. Now, suppose I wanted to add another cylinder. Because I did not change the name of my previous cylinder, when I add it, look what happens to the name. Blender adds a numerical suffix to the end to differentiate between two similarly named objects. If we change the name of the cylinders, let's say if I change this to barrel 1 and I change the other one to barrel 2, and we'll move it over here so we can see everything clearly, we could see that if I add, let's say, another cylinder, this one's going to be called cylinder with no suffix because now it is the only object named cylinder. We also saw that Blender is also shifting objects around in the outliner based on alphabetical order of the names. So barrel 1 and barrel 2 are above cylinder because they come first alphabetically. Okay, so hopefully this showcases to you why naming conventions are important, and it's very, very easy to lose track of your objects when they are so similarly named or when they look practically identical in the scene. So when we start creating something in Blender, name your objects appropriately and something easy for you to recognize so that you don't find yourself searching for it in the outliner in the scene. For example, if I name all of these cylinders and I had find myself clicking through all of them to figure out, okay, this is the one that I'm looking for, then you're already in a little bit of a bad practice. Sometimes it's okay, but most of the times, choose something appropriate. Now, as far as the style in which you name your objects, although using spaces is allowed, so for instance, I could have typed my cylinder, I like to typically stick to like sticking together multi-words together with no spaces, and capitalizing the first letter, such as this way. So use no like Pascal case, camel case, anything that you're really familiar with, or maybe you like to combine multiple words using underscores, for instance, or snake case for that matter. Lastly, in terms of scene cleanliness, just remember to delete or hide anything that you're not going to be using. For instance, I mainly use Blender for creating meshes and rarely for rendering. So the camera and light default objects are just a habit to me to just completely delete them from the start. So I could just delete this, it goes away in my outliner, and if I do end up needing them later, I can go to add and just re-add that camera or light if I needed it. Of course, if you have already done work on an object, but if you are unsure if you need them later, or you don't want to go through the trouble of deleting it completely, I also find it very helpful to create, let's say, a backup folder. So I can call this backup, and I could store my meshes in this backup folder, and I will just hide it. So for instance, let's say if I wanted to, I don't know if I want to deal with barrels later, I'll just hide it and collapse it, and I'll just store them there so that they are out of my visibility and not really bothering me. And then when I do need them or I need to reference a specific shape, I can just go back into the backup folder and take it. All this practice is going to make more sense when we start building a prop. Now, speaking of practice, we've really reached the end of the basics of Blender in Chapter 1. So, as a mini challenge before heading over to Chapter 2, I want you to try creating a new collection, moving an object into the collection, rename it something meaningful, clean up anything unwanted in your scene, and get into the practice of hiding and unhiding objects using the outlier. This is just a tedious way of me telling you, have fun with Blender. These little tasks are going to take you a long way. Anyways, guys, awesome work. I am super proud that you're sticking with me, and just know that as basic as what we're doing may seem, you are already building professional habits, one that are going to make you faster, cleaner, and more confident using Blender to express your creativity. So, I hope to see everyone here in Chapter 2, where we are going to dive into the core modeling tools and techniques. Until then, have fun.